meeting for those who aren't here. So I'm Laura Gardner. I'm the chair of our Climate Reality chapter, and we're excited to have a guest speaker tonight, Dr. Venkatesan. We're going to start out, however, with our land acknowledgement. South Coast Climate Reality acknowledges Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the land and the enduring relationship that exists between them and their traditional territories. The land on which we sit is the traditional unceded territory of the Wampanoag Nation. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation of their territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous people connected from time immemorial to this land on which we gather. And we just have a couple of updates. So as far as the 100% committed campaign goes, I was really hoping I'd have some good news with a couple more partners, but I've just got a couple people who are still working on it, still thinking about it. So I'm hoping to have 2 big Fairhaven businesses approved within the next couple weeks or so. So that would be really exciting. A couple that Ann, Richard, and I have been working on for a while. Also wanted to let you know that we had a very successful webinar with the university, the UUSF Church here in Fairhaven about the Green Future Act. And I finally got the link to that presentation. So if you missed it, I'll be sending out that YouTube link. I'll put it in the chat tonight too, as well. But it was great. And we learned all about how the bill is structured so that it is, it includes environmental justice, and it is not a regressive tax, which is great. And we also learned about ways that we can help support the Green Future Act, which is most importantly to contact your representative and make sure that they are a co-sponsor. We have, I believe, 71 co-sponsors so far, and we need more. And Strauss is not yet a co-sponsor, and neither is Schmid. So those are 2 South Coast reps that we particularly need to get on board. Mary Lou, do you want to talk briefly about the beach cleanup on the 25th?
Sure. I'm trying to keep everything. Let me see. So where were we?
We were at West Beach.
Thank you. Sorry, I have so many future things coming up with beach cleanups. I'm like, where were we? So we had a fantastic cleanup. A lot of young people, a lot of students came, and they're all fired up and ready to take action. So that makes me really, really happy. I can't remember that. I think it was like 149 pounds of trash, but you know, that's just trash. So I think the real issue is that these kids had a firsthand look at what we're up against, where it comes from, and how we need to stop it. So that was fabulous. And they've been jonesing to do another action. So we'll have another one coming up on October 16th. And then we'll have a brand audit after that. So anyway. Yeah.
We also have something coming up this Saturday. If any of you are free and want to stop by and help out, Kids Fest from 10 to 3. It's next to the Fairhaven High School, and there are going to be lots of vendors. There's going to be food, story time, entertainment, and also the Sustainability Committee of Fairhaven will have a booth where they're going to have costumes, and it'll be a costume swap, so that people don't have to go buy brand new costumes. And there's also going to be a costume parade and pumpkin painting. So it's like fun for the whole family. We have a table where we will have our big banner that says Climate Legislation Now that Benares is painting. It's like a big white parachute, and kids will be able to trace their handprint on it and write their name in the center of their handprint to show their support for climate legislation. And then we'll also have sample letters that Mary Lou and I wrote to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act and the Green Future Act here in Massachusetts. So kids can sign their names and then write something else or draw a picture. You know, we'll have art supplies and all of that there as well, along with other information about some of our other initiatives like 100% Committed and the Opt Up program. So that is Saturday, and it's rain or shine. So that is happening. And last thing, just a reminder to record acts of leadership on the Climate Action Now app, and that we are currently losing to Boston. We were winning in the app for a while, but we are currently losing again. So if you want to set those notifications to alert you to make sure to go in there and do a few actions every day. I've been feeling really good about the phone calls and emails I've been sending just relentlessly about all this stuff, because I'm sure you all have noticed, but there's that big spending bill in the federal government. It's getting watered down as we speak, and we need to put the pressure on to make sure that the climate legislation is as strong as we need it to be. So, anybody have any comments or questions about any of that? Okay, I'm really excited for our guest speaker, so I don't want to take any more time talking about this. Tonight we have Dr. Venkatesan with us. She is an academic economist and environmental activist, presently a faculty member in the Department of Economics at Northeastern University. She earned her doctorate in economics from Vanderbilt University and has published 3 economics textbooks under the series A Framework for Sustainable Practices. In 2019, she published her 4th text, SDG 8, Sustainable Economic Growth and Decent Work for All. As of April 2021, she assumed the role of editor-in-chief of the journal Sustainability and Climate Change. In 2016, Madhavi established Sustainable Practices, a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to facilitate a culture of sustainability as defined by reducing the human-made impact to the planet and its ecosystems within Barnstable County, Massachusetts. And she now serves as the organization's executive director. In 2019, Sustainable Practices initiated the Municipal Plastic Bottle campaign, and in spring 2020, they facilitated the commercial single-use plastic water bottle ban. As of July 2021, the municipal ban has been adopted by all 15 towns that constitute Barnstable County, and the commercial ban has been adopted by 10 towns. It is in effect in 7, and the remaining 3 will be effective December 31st, 2021. So that is really exciting. We're so happy to have you with us, Dr. Venkatesan. So take it away.
No, thank you so much for giving me this time to talk to you. And I hope that if you have any questions, you'll either just interrupt me and ask as we're going, or please definitely ask afterwards. I have a very short PowerPoint that I can share with you if I have the ability to share my screen. Okay. Hopefully I'm opening the correct one. They're both exactly the same, except that one actually deals with Mashpee, which is coming up in the next couple of months, but it doesn't really matter which one it is that I'm sharing with you. I thought it might be useful if you are looking and contemplating actually having a bottle ban yourself. So Sustainable Practices is the name that I just created because it seemed like what we were trying to do, and it made sense to have a name that actually aligned with the actions of the organization. And as Laura noted, the organization was started in 2016, but I actually didn't do anything with it until 2017. Thing that's important to note here is it was just started by one person. It was only started by me. That means that every single one of you can start this too. And it doesn't need a group to make something happen. It just needs one person to stand up and say, I want to make something happen. And more than likely, there are other people that want you to make it happen too. They just need someone to stand up first. So I think that's a really important point to make, if you don't mind my saying that. But the commercial single-use plastic water bottle ban, as you noted, followed the success of the municipal plastic bottle ban. The municipal plastic bottle ban went into effect and was actually an initiative that I put together because I thought that from just an advertising perspective, if you could get the town governments to say that they wouldn't purchase single-use plastic bottle beverages, you already had a step going in the right direction with regard to retail, because I knew it was going to be somewhat challenging. There are not a whole lot of retail bans in the United States. And what I mean by that is if the tax dollars are not going to be used on the sale, on the purchase of single-use plastic, then, and the government is supposedly there and is an operation to protect the public good, then we have a reason to question why we ourselves would not consume single-use plastic. So that was the reason for this. There were 2 steps to the municipal ban. One was the elimination of town purchase of single-use plastic bottled beverages of any kind. And then the other was the elimination of the ability for vendors to sell products on town property for town festivals and other types of gatherings in single-use plastic containers. So that eliminates beer to be dispensed in plastic containers or wine. And again, the point that's really important when you think about a municipal ban is it seems, first of all, like it would be low-hanging fruit, but the biggest issue you're going to deal with if you do follow suit with the municipal ban is that people that work in the town governments get really possessive about their jobs, and they don't want to be regulated by citizens. So the biggest issue that we had is the fact that the idea was that we were citizens filing a citizens petition in the community wanting to regulate town activities. And that to me is a big signal, because what it tells you right there is the town has lost sight of the fact that it serves its citizens. And when you start to see a pushback on something like that, because it would seem more appropriate that a town would listen to the fact that citizens are asking for something. So we filed the municipal ban starting in early 2019. It was a very challenging process because the language initially was ambiguous. So all of the initial citizens petitions had to be changed on town meeting floor. In spite of that, we had a nice majority out of the 11 that we filed. We had 7 that passed by having the language augmented on town meeting floor, and 4 that were indefinitely postponed, which gave us the ability to refile in the fall of 2019. At the end of 2019, we had passed in 11 communities, which was a really strong positive for us. And then we continued this process to ensure that we would try to get all 15 towns. So we did get a few more, and Truro and Truro, Mashpee, and Bourne then passed in 2020. Excuse me, 2021. The years have been very much of a struggle for me. So this year we had Truro and Bourne. Mashpee passed in fall of 2020. COVID has really changed our perception of time quite a bit, because it seems like 1 year missing. In early 2020, before COVID hit, we did start our filing of a commercial single-use plastic water bottle ban, which is what I'm talking to you about tonight. The commercial ban is much more significant than the municipal ban, where the municipal ban governs our ability to control how our taxpayer dollars are spent. The municipal ban governs retail sale of single-use plastic water bottles. So 2 questions that come up often are, why did we pick water bottles? Why water? And why not every beverage? And why did we limit the size? So I'm going to share that with you right away. We picked water because we knew that no matter what we did, there's going to be this pushback with regard to substitution, and municipal water is more regulated than bottled water. So that was a really good substitute, is your own tap. So that was number 1. The number 2 reason why we picked bottled water is it's because it is the single largest component of the plastic bottled beverage industry. And the number 3 reason, which I didn't tell you before, is that there were 3 reasons, is that plastic water bottles are something that every single person has come into contact with. So the tangibility, the fact that there is a substitute, and it's the largest component of the beverage market. All 3 of those elements were really important. The beauty of single-use plastic, though, is that it actually ties to so many other elements too. It is a planned obsolescence product because it's designed for single use. It has a greenhouse gas footprint, and potential potability of water impacts if you're looking at hydraulic fracking for the use of the inputs to create the plastic, instead of a baseline petroleum or fossil fuel based ground-based petroleum product. And then it has a consumption impact, because we do know that there are impacts with regard to chemical leachate from plastic, especially given the type of plastic it is. And as we talked about very briefly before our conversation right now, that leachate has been tied to a multitude of health issues, from endocrine disruption, autoimmune disease, obesity, ADHD, fertility, and cardiovascular disease, that have been slowly normalized within our culture over the last 40 years, which is very much paralleling its increased use in foods as well as other elements in this economy. And then, of course, there's the disposal life. The disposal life we don't want to talk about too much, for one simple reason, the marketing strength of the major beverage manufacturers has really done a very successful job of obscuring the disposal life as a potential solution. Somehow, if you can recycle your way out of this, then plastic is not a problem. And so right now, our goal is to really minimize that discussion because, as you probably are aware, there is a lawsuit against Coca-Cola by Earth Island Institute specifically for misrepresentation of sustainability of the plastic product. There is now also a lawsuit against a company called Blue Triton, which you are all very familiar with because it's now the private equity company that is the holding entity of what was the former Nestle Waters US or Nestle Waters North America. And that was also filed by Blue Triton. And both of these are filed against them for these two different companies for basically misrepresentation of their product. So when we look at these issues, these are the companies that have actually provided the financial resources for organizations such as Keep America Beautiful and the Recycling Initiative. And if recycling did work and it was the mechanism by which we could create a closed loop system, we wouldn't have so much plastic buried underground, or right now we're breathing it in as the most powerful contaminant known to man in terms of dioxin, and basically slowly killing ourselves through our own respiration. So this is an important element to take into consideration. So right now, this item right here that we have, the issue is unfortunately the huge divide. I am speaking to people who are knowledgeable about the issues related to plastic, and we may have forgotten what it feels like not to have that knowledge, but the majority of the American public, for a variety of reasons, does not know or is not aware or does not concern itself for a multitude of reasons, not necessarily because of blind faith in the issues of the products that they consume. So how do we connect with them? Because connecting with ourselves is easy. We already are believers. But I think where we connect with them is we have to start with a multi-channel, multi-pronged approach where you provide some of the issues that are available. But one other thing I also think that's really important is actually film. If you can provide this information, but at the same time have documentary films that invite people to come in and see and basically become in contact with their empathy with regard to seeing the suffering of another entity, I think you have an opportunity to actually start to move that dial a lot faster and a lot more. But as you know, there's a large component of consumption in the United States. Part of this is tied to marketing, but also that marketing is tied to our focus. Even as consumers, those of us have been investing our money in our retirement savings are looking for high yield. So even though we may be innocent in the sense that we wish to be sustainable and we're trying really hard, within our system, we're looking for the cheapest price, the highest return, and the easiest type of life that we can have. And that would have worked if people prior to our generation had actually been more diligent about the responsibilities inherent within government and with regard to critically analyzing how profits are being made or why prices are cheap. But that responsibility wasn't taken for a variety of reasons, so it really makes it challenging for us. So we really have to have a different way of thinking than maybe how we were raised to see our parents think. And this is where I think the time has come for us to actually engage in daily critical thinking. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. If it seems as though the human system can dominate the environmental system, it's probably a room for pause. So anyway, in terms of just the statistics that we provide, since our initiatives have been based on Cape Cod, we talk specifically about the statistics related to Cape Cod and the issues with regard to seabirds and mammalian life. The thing that's really interesting is, I don't know if you've all noticed this, but over the last 18 months, there's been little news with regard to whales dying and other animals dying because of plastic. Have you noticed that? That all of a sudden that kind of news has been suppressed, whereas almost it was in the press every single day for a while. I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, but I have my thoughts and I'm willing and able to hear all of yours as well. So in terms of just the single-use plastic bottle problem, we discuss it with the respect to the amount of of plastic debris. But the important aspect, and probably the most important aspect to understand for most people, is that plastic is not recycled into the same product, it's downcycled. And the downcycling of that product really increases the amount of microplastic in our system. It also decreases the use life of most of the products that we use too, in terms of clothing, which is where a lot of the plastic is deposited. So we constantly need to buy more clothing, because if you're wearing jeans that has plastic in it, the jeans probably start to stop stretching the right way after about a year's time. These are really interesting aspects that I don't think most people think about, because we are so focused on how much the jeans cost rather than the durability of any particular pair, which tells us a lot about how we're marketed to, and also how short-sighted we are in terms of our consumption choices. But the other issues that we have that we see constantly are the use of plastic in building materials, decking, shoes, things. You can go to a store these days and you can see products that say, this product has protected ocean plastic, and entry of ocean plastic by this amount, but no one is thinking about what happens when you dispose of that product. And that's where we have to change the question. It's not a question of repurposing the waste we already have. It's a question of the fact that it's going to eventually be wasted and it's going to be landfilled. And so since this is downcycled over here, what's happening with new bottles over here? Well, they're continuing to be made out of virgin plastic. And that's the part that we really need to bring to life in this discussion. The whole concept that recycling doesn't work because it downcycles, and it only can be downcycled at the most maybe 3 times before it has to be wasted. The other part we need to bring into people's minds is that for the level of progress we claim that our society has, our landfills are nothing more than a hole in the ground that is lined with plastic, with trash is put on top of it, and then it's lined again with plastic, with a couple of pipes sticking out, one for methane to escape and the other for us to pump out the water when it rains, which is highly toxic and eventually goes into our oceans. So it's really important to actually get people to start thinking about what progress means, because it's one thing to bury trash when it's organic. It's a totally different thing to bury trash that's inorganic, that will never break down, but will only actually leach or become sort of toxic element in terms of some animal's life and eventually affect human life. So in terms of the health and well-being, you all know this, I've already discussed this with you, but you also are very well that plastic affects us in every aspect, from the 3 elements that we need to live. We only need 3 things: air, water, and food. And plastic has contaminated all 3 of those elements. So things that we take for granted are the ones that are the most contaminated, which are also the things that we need the most to live. So the other issue is with regard to costs and recycling. And entities like Covanta, CMAS have been really great at promoting recycling. And the only reason why they promoted recycling is not because they actually thought recycling was ever going to be a solution, but because they knew that was a good way to market to the general public so they could get the continued stream of waste, which is how they make their money from municipal contracts. This whole concept of waste to energy is yet another aspect of that marketing. So it's really important for us to start to think about this. We are taking, when you burn coal, you know you have sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides. Those are the components of coal. When you burn trash, you have no idea. Your composition is different from mine. We are breathing in things we don't even know and we can't control. So this is an important aspect to think about too. Now, the alternatives, we don't really like to talk about alternatives in terms of alternative products and sustainable practices. We focus on reuse and use reusables, and we would focus on tap water. There is a big discussion all the time about PFAS. But the thing that's important to know is it's been in our water before. We're just measuring it better now. So we've been drinking this contaminant for a long time. It's also in the bottled water you drink. But I think you have a higher probability of having individual citizens within a community police their own water source if they know that they are dependent on it. than for them to think they have a transactional aspect of not having to consume it and therefore not even concern themselves with the contents of the water they drink. So for us, it's a question of actually just educating the public that PFAS exists everywhere. It's in our blood. Every human being pretty much on this planet has PFAS in their system because it doesn't exit your body. And it's not related to any kind of natural element. It has a lot more to do with the fact that we let people dump on our ground and enter into our groundwater. So as you probably are very well aware, it's based off of the Teflon, Gore-Tex, any type of repellent, water repellent product, fire products that are used to put out fires. So all of these things have contributed to ground level PFAS. So what this means to us is that we should really be regulating what we drop on our ground and taking a more communal perspective with regard to it. So the commercial single-use plastic bottle ban, water bottle ban, is related to some of these aspects I've already shared with you. So that's the rationale that we have in our citizens petition. We filed these as just as the same with the municipal ban as citizens petitions, given the benefit that we have as residents of the state of Massachusetts. We have the ability to put things on the town meeting warrant just by filing the government and asking that an article be put there. Nobody can take it off and nobody has jurisdiction over citizens' rights in the state. So that's the beauty. Even if the select board is against, even if the finance committee is against, you have your day on town meeting floor to push for what you think is the right thing. And then you just need the right amount of votes on that floor as well. So this is the article itself, this is the article language. This article language here specifically is for Mashpee. So if Mashpee passes in October, that will be the 11th town that we have. Then we'll go after Bourne and Truro in spring of next year, and we'll have Barnstable left. So the only town that this article has failed in has been Yarmouth. It failed by 9 votes. And there is a lot of politics, unfortunately, around that particular vote. And it's a very unfortunate situation, but we will not be pursuing the Yarmouth vote. We will let them sit out by themselves, and hopefully the town will make the right decision to institute this ban on their own. But in terms of the plastic, this is an important aspect here. We are looking at all plastic. So even if it's supposedly compostable, it would be not legal under this bylaw. And the main reason is, even if it's compostable, if you're using it at the level that you're using convenience-based single-use product, that's a whole lot of impact on the planet, both in terms of the input and also in terms of the throughput, because you're going to consume and have to dispose of and break down so much of this product. It's not the smartest thing to do would be to eliminate it. So that's the main reason why we have that. The other part is also related to the synthetic estrogens, because whether it's a plastic that's coming out of petroleum or one that's coming out of vegetation, both of them have synthetic estrogens, which are directly aligned to male fertility issues. We do have an exemption in there, and we did that just because we knew there'd always be some pushback, because there are always some people who feel like somehow the only way you can get water is through a plastic water bottle because marketing has worked so well for them. So we have those exemptions for that simple reason. But the important aspect to any bylaw is that you must have an enforcement vehicle. So we do have the enforcement vehicle, and it goes up to the highest fine that you can charge in the state of Massachusetts, which is $300 for any violation. So we did a graded violation, but the 300 is the threshold. And so we also changed the language here to make the enforcement what the town manager or town administrator, what they have in terms of their control, who they can give responsibility to. So some towns is ultimately the Board of Health, but if you specify that in the article, it actually slows down your process. It's best to designate it to whoever is in charge of the enforcement vehicle itself, which would be the town manager or administrator, and letting it be under their discretion. So we had to specify how the enforcement vehicle would be undertaken. We can only do it up to a certain point, but we had to leave it to the administrator. fundamentally, this is a law that the towns pass because the people want it in place. So the governments must comply to what the people have requested. That's our premise here. Now, as I noted when we started, right now there were six bottle bans in effect. The commercial ban was in effect as of September 1 in 6 towns. The 7th town went into effect on the 21st of September. And the other 3 will go into effect. The ones that were passed earlier this year will go into effect on December 31st. Mashpee, if and when it passes, will go into effect in September of next year. And the issue here is, did we have any challenges or pushbacks? Every one of these were implemented smoothly. I do believe that in some respects, we had the benefit of having so much press coverage over the bottle ban's implementation dates that the towns remembered to put those out to all vendors. But I also believe that there was a certain amount of Cape pride, if I can say it that way, in the idea that we have accomplished something that almost no other county in the United States has. We have 2/3 of all of the towns in our county with a ban on single-use plastic, which is a pretty significant thing when you think about it. That means you walk into a Stop and Shop and there is no pull-in springs. And it didn't quite hit me, the impact of what we had done, until September 1st, and I went into a store and there was no single-use plastic water bottle there. And there are 15 people in my organization, one representing every town. And we meet weekly every Wednesday. Now it's every Thursday night, excuse me. So we were all exchanging our stories because we all sort of had that moment when we walked into the store and saw this and saw these big empty shelves with no water. And we felt like we made a difference. It's not the only difference, it is the beginning, but at least we started a process. And single-use plastic water bottles are not the end. I mean, ideally, we'd like to get rid of plastic, period, and anything related to food. And then we'd like to get rid of any kind of single-use product, period, whether it be plastic or anything else, because single-use is very highly resource intensive. And we'd really like to change our perception of things where people take individual responsibility for the entire life chain of everything that they consume. That would be a perfect world, because that would mean that we operate daily in our behavior with compassion and with understanding that whatever we use, we must use in a way to respect the life of what was taken for us to have that use. And unfortunately, instead, we talk about things in a very odd way. Like when you think about teaching children about what to eat, it's not about somebody else not being able to eat. It's about the life that was sacrificed for them to live, that they should eat out of respect for that, number one, whether it be a plant or animal. But number two, because that life cannot live for itself, they should do something in honor of it by living positively for the energy that it gives them, right? That would make a whole lot more sense and be a lot more sensible, I think, than the way that we sometimes convey information. So we're hopeful that we can maybe push for that as we move forward. The status is what I've just shared with you. So there are 10 bottle bans in effect, and I've listed the towns out here. We have the entire Lower Cape covered, with the exception of Truro, which, if for those of you who are familiar, is a very small market, so it doesn't really have any kind of significant impact. We have Mid Cape almost completely covered, with the exception of Yarmouth, and all we need is Barnstable there. And then in the Upper Cape, if we have Bourne and Mashpee, we're done. So I'm pretty impressed with what everybody has been able to accomplish in my organization. I will say that we are a very unique organization. I've been part of many different volunteer groups in my life. My group, I can say this, is helpful to one another. We show up for each town. We are there to support one another. When there's a town meeting, at least 3 or 4 of us from another town will be there just as a support vehicle. We have our monthly movie series. People come from Sandwich, from Provincetown. We have 5 Adopt a Highway cleanup sites on Cape Cod. All of us participate in those. So I'm very fortunate because we've created a cohesive group where everyone genuinely likes and cares about each other and is self-supporting. So that part I think is also really important attribute of any organization. You don't have to be excessively large. You just have to be connected. And so the opportunity that we see is now. I mean, the world is looking for leaders, and the world is looking for hope, for some reason to believe that things can get better. And every day we have the opportunity to be that hope. And it might sound a little, maybe I'm putting myself out on the magnifier and saying this, but I do believe in our own very small way, we've promoted the idea that you can make a difference, and that all you have to do is just show up and vote. And that can be a significant element to really change a lot of things, such as single-use plastic bottles. And I believe that's my last slide, so I'm going to stop there. We have a lot of other materials that we have started to create, but they're all available on our website, which is sustainablepracticesltd.org. And there we actually have an infographic about the life cycle of a plastic bottle. It's also downloadable, so if you'd like to use it, please do. We also have what we started as our transparency reports. The first one was done in July. We'll have another one, but it'll be probably closer to December before that comes out. So I'm thinking it will probably be twice a year that those are written. The transparency report is specifically related to the American Chemical Council, which is plastic industry lobby. They use 2 life cycles typically to talk about how plastics have a less impact than aluminum and glass. And what they omit in their life cycles is they omit first the extraction impacts, such as if you're doing a hydraulic fracking, they're not taking into consideration the majority of the materials that are used to create plastic are coming from hydraulic fracking, which has a lot of adverse consequences. They omit the health consequences of leachate from plastic, which a lot of people don't even know about. They only think about BPA, but remember, BPA is only regulated for infants and toddlers. So adults can consume it. So any product made for an adult can have BPA in it. That's not true outside the United States, but we do not operate with the precautionary principle in the United States. That's why we have to go through litigation to get products taken off the market, because we're pro-business, because our whole economy runs on growth. It's not that businesses are evil. It's just that the mandate of fiduciary responsibility dominates everything, and we're all guilty of participating in it. So we have to think about that a little bit. But in terms of just in general terms, I guess I can just stop here and then ask if there are any questions. Really exceptionally proud of. The last one was with the Conservation Law Foundation, specifically talking about the Bourne expansion. That was with Kirsty Pecci, and the one before that was with the Earth Island Institute, which is a much larger nonprofit than we are. They have a global footprint. The Plastic Pollution Coalition is under their umbrella, for example, and then that was with their general counsel, Shumona Munjandar, who spoke specifically about the lawsuits filed against Coca-Cola and Blue Triton. And then before that was with an academic out of New Zealand. They have a freely downloadable book, and I put this out there for you because you need to check and see. I'll try to drop it in the chat right now if I can pull it up. But it's a book called Plastics Legacies, and it was written by a bunch of different academic areas that people who wrote it are contributing from multiple academic areas. And it provides nice data points, factual information that might be useful in your own conversations about plastic. But the issue, again, like I mentioned before, is that we can't take this product off the market unless we can prove conclusively without any doubt that it's harmful to everyone, which is one of the areas where science actually works against us. I'm not one of those blind believers that science is the greatest thing. Science told us the world was flat. Science also was used by the EPA to not have to uphold the Clean Air Act under the Bush administration, which Massachusetts, along with several other states, filed a lawsuit against EPA to force them to comply with automobile emissions. because that was their job under the rules related to governing and protecting us from global greenhouse gases, global warming. So it's important that we take everything in balance. And I don't think we do that. Common sense sometimes tells us what science takes a longer time to concur. And it's better to think about what is our risk tolerance as opposed to waiting for the risk to materialize. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I invite any questions you have. I'm going to put my glasses on. I took them off because I put this light on, and when you have glasses, the light, you'll see in a second, bounces off, and it's very hard to see me at all. I think it looks like I'm wearing a mirrored glass. So forgive me for that.
Wow, this is great. Thank you so much. One question I had, when in doing the citizen petition process, how many signatures did you try to shoot for?
In any Springtown meeting warrant will only require 20. So all Springtown meeting warrants are easiest to attack. But if you have a minimum requirement of 20, it's always good to get double the amount, 40. There is no benefit in going and getting more because it's not an advertising element. The bottom line is your goal is to just get it on the warrant. And so the issue with the fall town meeting warrant is dependent upon the town. So I would, if you were going to file in the fall, I would definitely check with your town clerk and find out the number of signatures required. Also, you should get the petition from your town clerk because each one has a separate set of language elements to it. And you don't want to go through all the trouble and then find out that maybe the petition you filed wasn't right. But a spring is actually the best one to go for because it's a low hanging fruit. It's easy.
Could I ask a question? Hi, Laura. How are you? Hi, everybody. I'm sorry that I came in so late. Madhavi, is that the way you pronounce your first name?
Madhavi.
Madhavi, hi. I missed the first almost hour of your presentation. Are you on Cape Cod?
I am.
You are, okay. As I am as well. And I live vicariously between here and the Catskill Mountains in the mid-Hudson Valley. But at any rate, the CLF lawsuit is big. And it's something that I had expressed to Laura and the chapter in the last couple of months. I think the town of Barnstable has totally ignored reality, in a sense, for the last 30 odd years. The Clean Water Act dates back to 1972 and to Richard Nixon. And initially, things like Superfund sites, like the Boston, that area around the airport, all that, harbor, that was the initial stuff. Now it's really coming down to nitrogen and phosphorus and what's going into the water table and the destruction of all the eelgrass around Cape Cod, the shellfish infrastructure, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm sorry if I missed out on your presentation, but what is your feeling with the CLF lawsuit relative to I think the town of Barnstable is full of it. They've been sitting on this for so long, and I've been involved with a nonprofit here for 50 years, and a pond association, and sewering is, they're cluster septic systems. There's all these alternatives and all this stuff going on and billions of dollars and blah, 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 all this stuff. This is way serious. And I'm so glad, Laura, that it finally came down with South Coast to get to the Cape, because we are the South Coast. And so thank you all for allowing me to blab away. for a moment. The infrastructure problems on Cape Cod are unbelievable. The water from cyanobacteria to the plastics that have been discussed, PCAFs, all that kind of stuff is just like, it's gone crazy. So thank you for the presentation. And I know it has been recorded, and I will go back and look at that recording. And I'm so sorry that I missed, and I'm sorry if I've been repeating stuff for the rest of the group. Thank you for letting me yabber away. Thanks, Laura.
Well, actually, you haven't repeated anything, because I wasn't really talking about groundwater pollution or issues related to the ponds in Cape Cod. I was referring only to the bottle ban efforts that we've had on the Cape. But since you did bring these up, I'm just going to give you my 2 bits here in terms of my opinion. When we're talking about cyanobacteria, the part that I find so interesting about this is that the cyanobacteria in some respects actually has carbon sequestration capabilities and is the Earth's way of rebalancing itself based on the amount of so-called nutrients that we have deposited into the ponds. I just wonder how much of our desire to control the Earth actually makes it so much more challenging for the Earth to recalibrate itself from us. Just a food for thought, because I every time I turn around and I hear these aspects of the negatives that are outcomes of human action and human encroachment, it seems still that we don't get it. We are dependent on the Earth. The Earth is not dependent upon us. And if things are changing, we need to figure out why. Instead of changing what the Earth is doing, maybe we need to change the actions we are doing. So I look to that as a great example for it. Even when we look at the PFAS issues, that means that we should be regulating human behavior. But the fact that we're already contaminated with PFAS is something that we need to take in stride. We have done this to ourselves. But just going back to the bottle ban, if there are any comments or questions that I could assist with there, I'd greatly appreciate having that opportunity.
I'd like to know more about how your group grew. Like, how many people were there in the beginning? Did you specifically recruit someone from each town so you'd have one from each town?
That's a wonderful question, Laura. It started with me. So I started it in 2016. It was my birthday, it was July. And I went ahead and I filed the paperwork to get a 501c3 designation and all of that. It came into effect in December of the same year, retroactive to my birthday. So that was when we became a legal entity filed in the state of Massachusetts, as well as recognized by the federal government. I didn't know what to do. I was in a state of my own change. I'm a single parent. And my son is now in college. He's a sophomore, but I'm as you mentioned, I'm a college professor. I teach at Northeastern right now. So I mean, I had my own life to deal with, and all these other things. And I was actually in 2 graduate programs at the same time, so I was finishing those things up as well. And so in fall of 2017, I got a grant from the New England Grassroots Fund. And it was for $500. That's all I asked for, because it was $350 to rent out the Chatham Orpheum Theater for a nonprofit. And it was $150 to buy the licensing rights for A Plastic Ocean. So that grant covered those 2 expenses for me. And I got all the monies that came from the selling of tickets, became my first amount of proceeds that I put directly in the bank. The thing that happened that day is something that I can only tell you, and it's just sort of magical. I went to the Chatham Orpheum. This woman shows up that I didn't even know. She looked a little crazy, I've got to be honest. She pulls in with this skiff full of plastic and drops it right in front of the theater. She made a movie an event because she understood the impact of plastic. She is a beach walker. She became one of my first people. Her name is Suzanne. The band Petitions in Chatham, and that's how she came along. Then I showed the films. I met another woman named Mary Cody. She's the filer for Sandwich, and I met her through one of the movies myself. And then I went to the Maritime Museum, and this would have been like November of 2018. And I met this other man who ended up being the filer for Harwich. Along the way, I met people through the activities that only like-minded people would probably go to. And the one connection all of them had was me. So I think that's why it sort of worked too, because they all sort of liked me and I liked them. And so we all had this connection. We just had this positive energy. The other thing is, I also believe that I might be the strategist or the executive director, but everyone is putting effort forth and everyone needs to be recognized. And oftentimes I think with a lot of these types of organizations, the recognition only goes to one person, which it eliminates the desire to also be acknowledged by the person who has a feet on the street in the town. So we made a very good effort from the very beginning to ensure that we recognized the leader of each one of our communities and we celebrated that person and we were there for their meetings. And I can't explain really how magical it was for us, especially before COVID. We would all show up for each other. There was never an opportunity for anybody to ever go anywhere alone. There'd always be one of us with them, because this is hard work. This is change agency. That's what you are. You're going somewhere and there are going to be people who are going to give you a hard time. And going out alone is the hardest thing in the world to do for your mental state of mind. So we never really became huge in the sense of lots of members. I only wanted to have lots of leaders. So we have a leader for each community, and each leader in their community has their own constituent group that they interact with. And that way everybody feels empowered, and yet at the same time, we're all working together. So that's how it worked. The other thing is we never really actively asked for donations. So each one of us is actually financed to some extent, some aspect of our work. We have had people make fundraisers for us. We've had large donors just show up without even knowing. We've had so many magical moments. I remember being invited to go speak at the Nauset Middle School, 6th grade class, my son's former teacher. They were doing a segment on plastics. And I was really concerned because the municipal ban, this was a 2019, wasn't seeming to go very well. We were getting so much pushback from communities. The Cape Codder newspaper was published. Sixth grader letters were published. They gave them 2 pages. There was nothing. I mean, I remember there were moments that I just had to break down and cry, because it was just like, how did this happen? I didn't make it happen. It happened because other people believed too. And that's what I think you have to have faith that what you're doing is giving the democratic process an opportunity to actually work, because you're willing to sit up and say, let's vote on this issue and make it an issue. And so there are people that say things like, oh, well, you created a ban. We didn't create a ban. We created an opportunity for people to exercise their right to have a ban. And I think that's the important part. And that's where the magic happens. And that's when, you just can't help yourself. You just think those are the moments that we feel like that our life is some purpose. Let's put it that way. And of course, there's a lot of work going to all the town meetings, the select boards and all that other stuff, which we went to. I've been to over every 50, all of them. Not everybody has gone to all of them, but I've always gone to all of them.
Your story is really inspirational, Marvi.
Oh,
It
I'm happy
really
to hear that.
is. It's
Thank
lovely to hear. It's lovely to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that too. The great movie to watch is Divide and Conquered. So the film series I told you about in 2017 started, but then with Chatham Orpheum, what ended up happening is we would screen a movie and we wouldn't always have an audience. So they became my partner. They didn't charge me to use their facility. They just let me have the opportunity to show a movie, and that became a revenue source. We needed revenue because we had to print flyers and other materials to stand out at town meeting. And so the movie that I showed in 2018 was Divide and Conquered, but then we also took it on the road. I showed it at every single library on Cape Cod. And I would take a list with me so I could get signups of anybody who was interested in what we were trying to do. So I don't even remember all of this because it just seemed like such a long time ago, but I kept on tweeting about it. So all of a sudden, one day I got an email from the director of Divide and Conquered. And then I got an email from Fox 25 News, and they came and interviewed us. And you know, those are the things that started out of nowhere, that actually gave us the momentum that we needed.
May I ask, have you had any interaction with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod?
Yes, I have.
Great. And I again, I miss so much. You're talking about a lot of recycling. Are you not?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not. You're talking about just plastics that are present in our waterways.
No, I'm talking about eliminating plastic at the point of sale, and recycling doesn't work, so we don't talk about recycling.
All right,
With
good.
what-
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Well,
I
please,
digressed. Excuse me. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I digressed. Yeah, I was saying like the recycling of plastic is like kind of nutty. So I think you were just saying that.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Forgive
No,
me.
it's okay. It's okay. But just to answer the question with regard to other nonprofits on the Cape, just to provide some insight for all of you. I reached out when it was just me to almost every single nonprofit on the Cape asking if they would partner with me. Nobody did. Nobody.
And no one responded?
I met with everyone. No one wanted to. And
Association to Preserve Cape Cod. Did you talk to the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition?
I didn't talk to the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, but I talked to other organizations that had a larger presence on the Cape. The issue is that what I found is that most organizations did not want to be involved until they knew that you were going to succeed.
Could you repeat that, please?
Most organizations are not willing to work with you unless they already know you're going to succeed. And so that was the number one issue for me, is that they wanted to be associated with something that was potentially going to succeed. Secondly, we were doing something that was controversial for many of them. They want to be liked. I didn't really care about being liked, because liking is not going to make me feel satisfied at the end of the day. I wanted to be somebody that did something right. And so there's a big difference between the two. So the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, like these other entities, if you really look at them, they're good at taking a stand on paper. They've really never taken an action that was meaningful. And so one of the
I
biggest—
agree with that. How about the Cape Cod Commission?
Excuse me, sir, but you keep interrupting me when I'm speaking. Do you mind if I finish my sentence?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Thank you. So if I could just finish and just saying that with the one town that we did not win in, we didn't win in that town because of two nonprofit organizations that have been working against us. One is called Care for Cape and the Islands, and the other one is the Cape Cod Anti-Litter Coalition, both of which were taking money from the Massachusetts Beverage Association. We found that out later because they're working on pro-recycling programs. And that's been going on the Cape ever since July now. So the Massachusetts Beverage Association provided about, I think, at least $10,000 in grant funding for this. And this is extremely unfortunate because it sets us back. That meeting, unfortunately, also was the Beverage Association was there. The Coca-Cola Company was represented. But going back to your comment about the Cape Cod Commission, sir, I would only add one thing. And I think it's really important, an important comment to at least consider. Government entities will only do anything that is typically aligned with currying favor to the people that they have an oversight over. So I wouldn't look to the Cape Cod Commission to be a maverick on an issue that probably needs a maverick. And so this is where grassroots fundamentally has to take the lead. And we can't continue to go after regulators to do the job because we haven't been voting well to get the right regulators in office. So until we get the right representation in office, because we are looking at a world where people who are in leadership are thinking about their community, the community needs to act like a community and step up to that responsibility.
We're past 8:30, but does anyone have any final questions? This was so incredible. I took copious notes that I will share out, and I did record this as well. And we're going to talk as a group about this and see what people think about taking this on as a campaign. And if we have anyone in our group who's especially interested in doing this work, I hope it sounds like so they can reach out to you with further questions.
You could reach out to us. I'm sure, I mean, we'll send you everything we have. If we can support you in any way, we'll do it. We'll tell you everything we've done wrong and hopefully help you do all the things that are right. And I'm sure that many of us would be willing to assist if you wanted us physically to help you too. You can do this. You can make this happen.
Thank
Laura,
you.
if I may say, please, thank you. I agree with your assessment, your political assessment. I'm just saying that those entities are there and they need to be forced to do what they're doing. I have no disagreement with what you're saying whatsoever. I was not challenging that. I was just asking your opinion. And again, I apologize for missing the initial part of your presentation, which might have made it more clear to me. But I thought it was important to ask you about those political entities. And I thank you for your response, and I agree with you.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Laura. Thank you, Laura, for letting me comment. Thank you.
Sure.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you very much for the opportunity again. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.